Dr. Mara Ellison had always believed that the universe was filled with wonders waiting to be understood. That belief was the main reason she accepted the long-term assignment on HFY NEXUS, a quiet research outpost on the edge of charted space. Most people avoided this sector because of the many unknown species, strange natural signals, and reports from ancient explorers who swore the planet held creatures unlike any others. But Mara did not fear mystery. She welcomed it. Curiosity was her guiding light. Life on the outpost was peaceful but lonely. The building was small, more like a compact shelter than a true facility. Each day, Mara studied plants, soil samples, and wildlife patterns. She carefully logged each detail, believing that even the smallest observation could one day help others understand this untouched world. She never expected anything extraordinary to happen. The strange sightings and old tales of dangerous creatures felt more like myths than real threats. Most days were quiet, sometimes too quiet. On the morning of the encounter, the air outside was cool and smelled faintly of minerals after a light overnight rain. Mara stepped out with her usual equipment bag slung over her shoulder. Her goal that day was simple: collect data on the unusual glowing plants that dotted the valley south of the base. She had been monitoring them for weeks, fascinated by how they pulsed gently at night, as if breathing with the rhythm of the planet itself. The path to the valley took her between tall, silver-leafed trees that shimmered whenever the wind passed through them. Soft blue insects drifted lazily through the air, creating a calm, dreamlike atmosphere. Mara hummed quietly to herself, enjoying the beauty. She had walked this route so many times that she knew exactly where to step to avoid uneven ground and where to pause to record different readings. Everything felt familiar, safe, and predictable until it didn't. As she reached the edge of the valley, she noticed an unusual silence. The insects were gone. The gentle breeze seemed to stop. Even the plants that normally swayed slightly in the wind appeared still. This sudden calm made her pause midst. Years of scientific training taught her to pay attention when nature changed its rhythm. Sometimes silence meant nothing. Sometimes it meant everything. Mara slowly lowered her pack and looked around, trying to make sense of the quiet. She checked her scanner, but it showed only normal readings. Her heartbeat remained steady, though she felt a slight prickle of alertness. She wasn't afraid, exactly. She simply felt watched. A soft thump sounded behind her light, but heavy enough that she instinctively turned. What she saw made her mind freeze, not out of fear, but out of pure astonishment. Standing only a short distance away was a creature she had never seen before. It was tall, much taller than any human, with a strong but balanced body covered in smooth, dark scales that glimmered like polished stone. Its eyes were bright and intelligent, reflecting the soft light of the valley. It moved with a quiet grace that did not match its size, as if every step was calculated to conserve energy and maintain silence. Mara realized with stunned clarity that she was standing face to face with a species known in old records as the Varkal. Many travelers had spoken of the Varkal in whispers, describing them as unmatched hunters, creatures so skilled and powerful that most beings avoided their territory. But Mara had always believed many of those stories were exaggerated. She never once expected to see one in person, much less at such an incredibly close range. The creature did not move toward her at first. It simply studied her with calm, unblinking eyes. Mara's breath caught, but she did not step back. She knew that sudden movement around any unknown animal was unwise. Instead, she slowly lifted her hands in a peaceful gesture and kept her body relaxed. Her mind raced through every bit of knowledge she had about interacting with large animals. Even though none of it was meant for a creature like this, she expected fear to rise inside her. But strangely, it didn't. Something about the creature's posture did not feel threatening. It seemed curious more than anything else. Mara reminded herself that she was a scientist. Curiosity connected all living beings, even those separated by galaxies. With slow, careful motion, she reached for the small universal translator clipped to her belt. She did not raise it high, only held it near her chest so the creature could see she was not hiding anything. She pressed the activation button, and a soft tone sounded. The creature tilted its head slightly in response. "Hello," Mara said gently, trying to keep her voice steady and clear. "I mean no harm. I am a researcher." Her words were translated into soft tones that echoed lightly in the air. The creature listened, though it did not respond. Mara waited, giving it time to process the unfamiliar sound. The creature then took a single step forward. It was slow, deliberate, and surprisingly quiet. Its gaze drifted from her face to the equipment at her side, then back again. Mara could sense a strange intelligence behind those eyes, one that weighed possibilities, intentions, and meanings. She kept still, knowing that sometimes respect was shown through calmness, not action. As the creature came closer, she noticed something she hadn't seen before: a thin, shallow cut along one of its forelegs. The edges looked irritated, perhaps from brushing against rough surfaces or sharp plants. It was not a deep wound, but it seemed to bother the creature enough to make its movements slightly uneven. Mara's instinctive concern rose, soft and genuine. She had spent her entire life helping creatures, not fearing them. She did not reach out or act impulsively, but she made sure her tone carried warmth as she spoke again. "You're hurt," she said softly. "I can help if you let me." The creature's ears, small and pointed, shifted slightly at the sound. Mara did not know if it understood her words, her tone, or simply recognized kindness, but something in its posture changed. It stood tall, but not rigid, alert, but not defensive. Mara slowly lowered herself to a sitting position on a nearby flat stone. This gesture, she hoped, showed trust. Sitting made her smaller, less imposing. She kept her gaze gentle, knowing eye contact could communicate familiarity rather than challenge. The creature watched her, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch between them. The valley remained silent, as if the world itself held its breath. Then, in a motion so subtle she almost missed it, the creature lowered its head slightly. Not a full bow, but something close. An acknowledgement, a sign that it did not see her as a threat. Mara felt a wave of amazement. According to all reports, the Varkol did not acknowledge other species. Yet here, in this quiet valley, a powerful being stood before her and offered a gesture that felt almost respectful. She understood at that moment that she had crossed into its territory. It had every reason to chase her away or simply ignore her, but instead, it stayed curious about this quiet human who did not run, did not panic, and did not raise a weapon. She had shown calmness, and somehow, that had reached the creature in a way she couldn't fully explain yet. The creature remained still, then slowly settled onto its haunches a short distance away, watching her as if waiting to understand her next move. Mara knew instinctively that this was no ordinary encounter. Something meaningful had begun. Here's something that would change her understanding of this species, and perhaps even her place in the galaxy. She didn't know yet why the strongest predator on the planet had chosen to show her patience instead of power. She only knew that this moment was the beginning of a story she would never forget. And as she sat there in the silent valley with the creature, observing her calmly, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her heart, understanding that sometimes respect begins with simply choosing not to fear. Mara stayed seated on the stone, her notebook forgotten for the moment, her full attention on the creature before her. The Varkol, which she began thinking of quietly as Carver, did not move immediately. Instead, it simply observed, its bright eyes scanning every detail of her posture, her equipment, even the subtle movements of her hands. Mara realized that she had never felt so studied in her life, and yet, strangely, it was not unpleasant. She felt the presence of intelligence in the creature, an awareness that seemed almost human in its depth, though entirely alien at the same time. For several long minutes, neither moved. Mara's heart remained calm, but her mind raced with possibilities. The creatures of Hellion 6 were known to be unpredictable. The stories she had read as a student spoke of the Varkol's power, their strength unmatched in the region, their speed unmatched in the galaxy. Every instinct told her to remain patient, to wait and let the creature decide what to do next. Fear would have been natural, but instead she felt a strange mixture of awe and curiosity. She knew she was witnessing something remarkable, and she wanted to understand it, not disturb it. Slowly, Mara reached into her bag and pulled out a small, soft fabric she used for handling delicate plant samples. She laid it carefully on the ground beside her, showing that she meant no harm. It was a subtle gesture, and she hoped the creature could sense the intention behind it. Carver's eyes followed the movement, and for the first time, tilted its head as if trying to understand what she was doing. Mara whispered softly to herself, "Small gestures can speak louder than words." After a moment, she decided to try speaking again. Her voice was soft, almost a murmur, carefully modulated so as not to sound threatening. "I am Mara Ellison," she said. "I study this planet. I only want to learn." The universal translator converted her words into a smooth tonal sequence, and Carver's ears flicked slightly. The creature's body language changed subtly. The tension in its limbs relaxed ever so slightly. Mara sensed a faint shift in energy, as if the Varkol was beginning to recognize her intentions as sincere. The more Mara observed Carver, the more she noticed the small details that set it apart from anything she had ever studied. The way it balanced its weight, the careful way it positioned its limbs, the subtle flicks of its tail to maintain equilibrium. Every movement spoke of control and intelligence. It was not only strong, it was precise, deliberate, aware of every action and reaction. Mara realized that the stories of its unmatched strength did not capture the whole truth. Carver's power came from more than muscles. It came from thought, from strategy, and from an innate understanding of the world around it. At one point, the creature shifted slightly, moving closer while still maintaining a safe distance. Mara remained still, letting it set the pace. She noticed the slight limp in its front leg, and her concern grew. The cut she had seen earlier might not be dangerous, but it could have caused discomfort or slowed it down in ways she could not yet measure. Gently, she spoke again. "I can help," she said. "It won't hurt, I promise." Her words carried warmth, and she kept her hands visible, palms open. Carver's gaze lingered on her hands. Mara understood that this was a crucial moment. Any sudden movement might startle the creature, but patience, calmness, and the absence of threat could encourage trust. She took a slow breath, then shifted slightly to present herself in a less imposing way. She lowered her shoulders, relaxed her stance, and met its gaze evenly, without aggression or fear. Mara knew from years of observing animals that confidence without dominance often communicated more effectively than force ever could. Time seemed to stretch. The air remained still, the soft light of the planet casting gentle shadows across the valley. For Mara, the moment felt both long and incredibly alive. She was aware of every sound, the distant rustle of leaves, the faint hum of insects returning after the silence, the quiet echo of her own breathing. But above all, she was aware of Carver, the powerful creature that seemed to measure her as much as she measured it. Then, something unexpected happened. The Varkal shifted its gaze from her face to her bag, then to her tools, then back again. It was as if it was trying to understand not just her actions, but her purpose. Mara realized that her work might have been visible even from a distance, the careful labeling of samples, the way she handled living things with care. Perhaps the creature understood, in its own way, that she approached the world differently than others might. Mara felt a deep respect growing inside her for Carver. It was not only strong and intelligent but also capable of discernment, a quality she knew few beings could truly possess. Deciding to move cautiously, Mara reached for a small container of a natural salve she carried for fear, a harmless substance meant to soothe minor scrapes and cuts on plants and animals. She set it on the ground near her and spoke softly. "This could help your leg," she said. "It's safe. I won't touch you unless you want me to." Carver's head tilted again. Mara noticed a faint shift in its stance, a subtle lowering of its shoulders, as if it was weighing her offer. The patience of the creature surprised her. Despite its natural power, it did not rush. It considered, it observed, it responded thoughtfully. Minutes passed. Carver finally inched closer, keeping just enough distance to feel comfortable while still showing curiosity. Mara remained still, waiting for any sign that the creature might withdraw, but it did not. Instead, it sniffed lightly near the salve, its movements careful, almost ceremonial. Mara's heart lifted slightly. She was witnessing something extraordinary, the first steps of trust forming between species that had never truly interacted before. To maintain calmness, Mara spoke again, describing her actions in soft, deliberate tones. "I want to help you," she said. "You don't need to be afraid." Her voice carried patience, and she let it flow naturally, as if telling a story to a close friend rather than negotiating with an unknown being. Carver's gaze lingered, and Mara felt that something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of intent, a connection based not on fear or dominance but on understanding. After some time, Mara slowly knelt down on one knee, placing her hands gently on her lap. This was another gesture of respect, small but meaningful. She wanted the creature to know that she would not move aggressively, would not take advantage of its trust. Carver shifted its weight, then settled into a low crouch nearby. It was as though the creature was saying, "Without words, I will observe. I will see if your intentions are true." Mara understood the significance. To be allowed this close, to be acknowledged in such a way, was not a small matter. Throughout the next hours, Mara spoke softly, moved slowly, and observed carefully. She began to see patterns in the creature's behavior, the flick of an ear when it heard distant sounds, the twitch of a tail when it was thinking, the way its body shifted slightly to maintain balance. Every movement was deliberate, every reaction had meaning. Mara realized she was not just witnessing strength, she was witnessing intelligence expressed in form, awareness expressed in action. By the end of the day, Carver had moved slightly closer, enough that Mara could see the details of its scales, the depth of its eyes, the strength in its limbs. She felt a quiet joy at being allowed this close, and she spoke to the creature as she would a careful friend. "I am glad you are here," she said softly. "I want to learn from you, not harm you." Her words carried sincerity, and the Varkal seemed to understand, even if only in its own way. As the sunlight began to fade, painting the valley in gentle oranges and purples, Mara finally reached for her notebook. She wrote quickly but carefully, documenting every detail of the encounter, every small gesture, every nuance in the creature's behavior. She knew that this moment was special, that it was unlikely to be repeated exactly the same way again, and yet, she also understood that this was only the beginning. Somewhere deep inside, Mara felt a quiet certainty. This was not a chance encounter. There was a reason the Varkal had paused, a reason it had not fled or attacked. There was a reason it had allowed her near, and whatever that reason was, Mara knew that it held the potential to teach her not only about this incredible species, but about trust, patience, and understanding across boundaries she had never imagined. She closed her notebook gently, looking at Carver one last time before heading back to the outpost. The creature remained still, watching her retreat with a calm awareness. Mara knew that she had left an impression, just as it had left one on her, and as she walked back along the silver-leafed trees, the quiet valley seemed alive in a new way, filled not only with the natural beauty she had always loved, but with the memory of a connection that transcended words, species, and expectations. Mara felt a quiet smile spread across her face. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be patient, to show respect, and to be seen by something so strong and so different, and to realize that respect was something earned through calmness, sincerity, and the courage to simply be oneself. The next morning Mara woke before dawn. The twin suns of Helion 6 had not yet risen, and a soft mist blanketed the valley, making the silver leaves glisten like scattered diamonds. She packed her equipment carefully, making sure to bring the natural sap, a few clean cloths, and her tools for taking measurements. Today, she decided, she would take the first careful steps toward helping Carver. Her heart beat steadily, but excitement ran quietly beneath it. The kind that comes from knowing that a rare opportunity awaited. Mara stepped out of the outpost and moved toward the valley. The path was familiar, but she approached it with a new sense of purpose. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. She did not rush. She understood that today would require patience, not speed. As she approached the clearing where she had first met Carver, she noticed the soft footprints along the damp earth, large, precise, deliberate. The creature had been here, moving carefully through the mist, but it had left no sign of aggression. Mara felt a quiet reassurance. The bond from the previous day, however fragile, seemed to remain. That she reached the clearing and found Carver waiting at a distance. The creature's eyes followed her movements with the same calm curiosity she had noticed before. It had not moved closer, nor had it fled. It simply observed, its body relaxed, yet ready to react if necessary. Mara smiled softly, speaking gently as she moved slowly forward. "Good morning," she said. "I have something to help your leg today." The universal translator carried her words, soft and smooth in the cool morning air. Carver tilted its head slightly, then shifted its weight. A subtle gesture Mara interpreted as acknowledgement. She understood that she needed to be patient. Today, any sudden move could undo the progress of the previous day. Mara slowly laid out her supplies on a flat rock a few meters away. She did not approach the creature yet. Instead, she allowed it to watch, to choose whether it would come closer. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the gentle sounds of the valley, the whisper of the wind through the silver leaves, the distant hum of the small insects beginning to stir, and the soft thud of Carver's tail adjusting its balance. Mara remained still, hands resting on her knees, speaking occasionally in low, soothing tones. "I will not rush," she said. "You decide the pace." Her words were more than reassurance. They were a promise, and she hoped the creature could sense it. After some time, Carver stepped forward, slow and deliberate, stopping several meters from her. Mara held her breath, careful not to make any sudden movements. She noticed the slight limp in its foreleg, the same one she had seen the day before. The cut was small, but it was inflamed, and the creature occasionally shifted weight to ease discomfort. Mara knew that helping would require trust, not force. She could not touch it yet. First, she needed to show that her intentions were safe and gentle. She picked up a small cloth and dipped it lightly in clean water from her container, wringing it carefully so that it was damp but not dripping. Then, holding it in both hands, she set it on the rock, leaving it in clear view. "This is clean," she said softly. "You can come closer if you want. I won't hurt you." Her movements were slow, almost ritualistic, allowing Carver to observe every detail without fear. The creature moved another step closer, eyeing the cloth and then her hands. Mara noticed a subtle change in its body language. The shoulders relaxed slightly. The tail shifted to maintain balance rather than tension. Mara understood that this was a major step. Carver was allowing her presence and acknowledging her calmness. She spoke again, whispering encouragement. "I only want to help. You can trust me." Carver's head lowered just a little, and it shifted its weight to favor its healthy leg. Mara realized that the creature might be testing her intentions as much as she was testing its willingness to accept help. Every gesture mattered. Every pause had meaning. She reminded herself to stay still, to speak softly, and to let the creature take the lead. Slowly, Mara reached for the salve. She did not approach Carver directly. Instead, she held the container on the ground near her, allowing the creature to notice it. "This will help your leg feel better," she said gently. Carver moved slightly, leaning closer to inspect the container. Mara's breath remained steady. She waited, letting the creature make the next move. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Carver stepped forward enough for Mara to see the cut clearly. It was a shallow scratch, red around the edges but not deep. Mara nodded softly, pleased that it was not more serious. She carefully dipped the cloth into the salve, then held it out on her palm up, showing that she would not move toward the leg yet. Her intention was clear. She would not touch it without consent. Carver sniffed the air, eyes following the movement of the cloth. Mara waited patiently, speaking softly as she did. "I won't hurt you," she repeated. "I just want to make it better." The creature remained still, yet closer than before. It was clear that it understood her intentions to some degree, even if only through tone and body language. Mara felt a sense of quiet triumph. Trust was being built. Step by step, she lowered herself slightly, closer to the ground, keeping her movements slow. She noticed that Carver's breathing had calmed, the small puffs of air coming in rhythm rather than in tension. She spoke gently again. "You can watch. You can leave any time. I will not move toward your leg until you are ready." Mara's words were simple, yet they carried respect, patience. and understanding. Carver shifted its weight one more time and lowered itself slightly, resting its foreleg in a position that made the cut visible but not threatened. Mara smiled softly. She did not rush. She picked up the damp cloth with salve and lightly touched the area around the cut, not the cut itself yet, only the surrounding scales. She felt a faint shiver pass through the creature, but it did not move away. Instead, it watched her intently, as if considering the next step. Encouraged, Mara whispered, "It's okay. I am careful. I will help." She took a very small amount of salve on her fingers and gently applied it around the wound, careful not to touch the sensitive area directly. Carver remained still, only adjusting slightly to balance its weight. Mara could feel the creature's awareness, its intelligence, and even its acceptance growing. She understood that every small gesture mattered more than anything else. For the next hour, Mara worked patiently, cleaning and applying the salve. She did not rush, spoke softly, and kept her hands visible at all times. Carver never made a sudden move. It simply observed, allowing her presence. Mara began to notice subtle signs of trust. The creature's tail relaxed more fully. Its breathing became smoother, and it occasionally shifted closer, as if inviting her attention. During that time, Mara spoke to Carver as she would to a close friend. She described the plants, the light, the way the mist drifted across the valley. Her voice carried warmth and calmness, reinforcing the safety of the moment. Carver responded in small, subtle ways, tilting its head, shifting weight, flicking an earbud. Mara felt these gestures as communication, though no words were exchanged. A silent understanding was forming between them by the time the sun rose fully, bathing the valley in soft gold. The cut was clean and coated with salve. Carver flexed its leg, testing it carefully. Mara watched, relieved, as the creature moved with slightly more ease. She spoke softly, "See, better already." Carver lowered its head slightly in acknowledgement, a gesture Mara interpreted as acceptance and gratitude. Mara remained near the creature for some time afterward, documenting her observations and speaking gently. She did not leave immediately, knowing that sudden departure could undo the trust she had built. Carver stayed nearby, calm and observant, a silent companion sharing the quiet beauty of the valley. For Mara, the day had been extraordinary. She realized that helping Carver required more than skill. It required patience, understanding, and respect for boundaries. She had never interacted with any creature like this before. The Varkol's intelligence and awareness went beyond simple instinct. It was aware of her presence, her intentions, and her care. And in return, Mara had learned that trust could be earned, even with the strongest beings, through patience, calmness, and gentle persistence. As she packed her tools and prepared to return to the outpost, Mara felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had helped without forcing, guided without demanding, and connected without words. Carver remained in the clearing, watching her leave with the same calm attentiveness. She knew that the bond they had begun to form today was just the beginning, and that future encounters would deepen the trust and understanding between them. Walking back along the familiar path, Mara reflected on the day's events. She had not only treated an injury but had learned something far more important: the strength of connection, the power of patience, and the value of respect. Carver was not simply a creature of immense power. It was intelligent, aware, and capable of recognizing sincerity, and Mara had been fortunate enough to meet it on terms of mutual respect. As the outpost came into view, Mara glanced back toward the valley. A shadow among the mist hinted at Carver's presence. Watching silently, she smiled, knowing that this connection would guide both her research and her understanding of what it meant to truly communicate across species. And in that quiet, the following days brought a new rhythm to Mara's life on Hellion 6. Each morning, she woke before dawn, eager to return to the valley and continue building the fragile trust she had begun with Carver. The twin suns rose slowly over the horizon, casting long golden streaks through the silver-leafed trees, and the air was always filled with the faint hum of life, soft, constant, yet never intrusive. Mara walked deliberately along the familiar path, her pack light but equipped with supplies, her mind focused on patience and care. Every step carried awareness, every movement was thoughtful. Carver seemed to have sensed her presence before she even entered the clearing. By the time she reached the familiar spot, the creature was already there, standing with a calm attentiveness that Mara found both awe-inspiring and comforting. Its gaze followed her movements, intelligent and precise. She smiled softly and lowered herself onto a flat rock at a respectful distance, showing once again that she did not intend to impose. "Good morning," she said, her voice gentle. "I'm here to help, if you're ready." For a few moments, the valley remained quiet, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of small insects. Mara did not move closer, but she did speak softly, narrating the morning in small details: the way the mist hung in the air, how the sunlight touched the edges of the leaves, and the subtle patterns in the flowers she had observed. The words were simple, calm, and steady. Carver's eyes followed each movement and listened to each tone. Mara could sense that it was learning from her behavior, just as she was learning from its. She decided that today would be the day to test whether the creature could allow her closer contact. She reached into her bag and gently took out the small cloth and salve she had used previously. Mara did not approach Carver directly. Instead, she placed the items on the ground where the creature could see them. Then she sat back, hands resting on her knees, speaking in the same calm, rhythmic tones. "It's here again," she said. "You can come closer if you want. I will not rush you." Carver paused, observing the setup carefully. Its body shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if measuring the situation. Mara remained still, patient, and silent for several long moments, allowing the creature to decide its next step. Slowly, Carver stepped forward, closing the distance but still maintaining control over its movements. Mara's heart lifted slightly at the careful approach. The creature's actions spoke volumes. It was showing interest, but also awareness, thoughtfulness, and a quiet consideration of her presence. Mara smiled and began to speak softly about her tools, the salve and the gentle purpose behind each item. "I will be careful," she said. "You can watch every step. You can leave any time." Carver's head tilted slightly, and Mara noticed the subtle signs of relaxation. The tail moved in smooth, gentle motions. The shoulders relaxed and the breathing became more even. Each small gesture reinforced her understanding that patience and respect were being returned in kind. Carefully, Mara extended the cloth with a dab of salve on her palm, keeping her hands visible and flat. She did not touch the creature yet. Instead, she allowed Carver to decide whether to approach. The Varkal studied the cloth and then glanced at her hands, its head moving with deliberate attention. Mara spoke softly again. "This is to help your leg," she said. "I won't touch it until you allow me to. I promise." After a tense moment, Carver lowered itself slightly, leaning closer to the cloth without making contact. It sniffed the air gently, assessing the situation. Mara's breath remained steady. She could feel the quiet intelligence in its attention, the careful weighing of her actions, and a tentative trust forming. She knew that trust was not given lightly, not to a creature so powerful. Each small gesture had meaning, and every moment was building the foundation of something extraordinary. Mara applied a small amount of salve to the cloth and slowly pressed it against the area around the cut, careful to avoid any sudden pressure. Carver flinched slightly, but did not move away. Mara whispered reassurance, moving slowly, rhythmically, keeping her movements predictable and calm. The creature observed every detail, its bright eyes fixed on her hands, absorbing the careful actions she took. Mara felt a quiet satisfaction, realizing that she had earned a level of trust that went beyond instinct. Over the next hour, Mara continued her careful work. She spoke softly, describing the details of the valley and the patterns of life around them. Carver shifted occasionally, leaning slightly closer as if inviting more contact. Mara could feel the warmth of connection growing in the valley, a silent communication passing between them. She did not force it. She allowed the creature to control the pace, understanding that trust could only deepen when it was voluntary, when the other party felt safe to accept it. By midday, the cut was clean and treated, and Carver tested its leg carefully. Mara watched, relieved, as the creature flexed and moved slightly more comfortably. It was a subtle but significant sign. Her gentle approach had succeeded not only in helping with the physical injury but also in reinforcing mutual trust. Mara smiled, speaking softly. "See, better already. You were very brave." The creature's head dipped slightly, a gesture Mara understood as acknowledgement. After the treatment, Mara sat quietly, allowing the creature to rest. She spoke about other observations in the valley, the movement of small insects, the rustle of distant leaves, and the way the mist lingered over the ground. Carver remained nearby, calm and attentive, demonstrating a willingness to share space without any tension. Mara realized that this quiet companionship was as significant as any direct action. Presence, patience, and respect were forming a bond stronger than simple communication. In the hours that followed, Mara noticed more subtle signs of connection. Carver allowed her to place small markers near the plants she studied, seemingly interested in her work without feeling threatened. It would watch silently, occasionally shifting its position to remain comfortable, but never showing fear or aggression. Mara realized that the creature's understanding extended beyond instinct. It recognized patterns, intentions, and the quiet care in her actions. She was witnessing a rare intelligence in action, a mind capable of reflection and assessment. The day moved slowly, a rhythm of quiet observation and careful interaction. Mara spoke softly to Carver about her research, about the glowing plants and the minerals of the valley, about the subtle changes she had noticed since her arrival. Though the creature did not speak, its attentive gaze and measured movements conveyed understanding. Mara felt that the bond they were forming was not only one of trust but of respect. She began to understand that respect was earned through patience, care, and consistency, not through dominance or force. That as the twin suns began to dip toward the horizon, casting the valley in soft purples and golds, Mara carefully packed her tools, ensuring nothing was left behind. Carver remained in the clearing, watching her movements with steady attention. She felt a quiet pride in the progress they had made. The creature had allowed her to approach, to help, and to share the space of the valley without fear. The mutual understanding they had built was fragile but powerful, a bond that went beyond words. Before leaving, Mara spoke softly to Carver one last time. "Thank you for trusting me today," she said. "We will meet again soon." She knew that the Varkal understood, at least in part, the meaning behind her words. Its head dipped slightly, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement. Mara smiled, feeling the warmth of connection between two very different beings, each learning from the other in ways neither had expected. Walking back toward the outpost, Mara reflected on the day's events. She understood now that the bond she was forming with Carver was unique. It was not simply about helping an injured leg. It was about learning to communicate across the boundaries of species, understanding the value of patience, and recognizing the quiet strength that comes from respect. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the opportunity to witness such intelligence and to be part of this fragile connection as she reached the outpost. Mara glanced back at the valley. The shadow of Carver lingered among the silver-leafed trees. Watching her with the same calm attentiveness she had come to recognize, she felt certain that the creature's respect had been earned, not through words, but through her steady presence, her gentle care, and her patience. The valley, the creature, and the quiet bond they shared seemed to radiate a calm energy, a promise of trust and understanding that Mara knew would continue to grow in the days ahead. That night, Mara recorded her observations in her notebook, describing the subtle behaviors, the measured movements, and the moments of silent understanding. She wrote not just as a scientist, but as someone who had experienced a connection that transcended species. Carver's gestures, his attentiveness, and the calm intelligence in his eyes had taught her a lesson about patience, respect, and the extraordinary power of gentle persistence. As she closed the notebook, Mara felt a quiet excitement for the future. She knew that the bond she was building with Carver would continue to deepen, and that together they could explore the mysteries of the valley in ways that neither could do alone. The strongest predator in the galaxy had shown that respect could be given, not through fear or dominance, but through. The days that followed were filled with a quiet rhythm. Mara's visits to the valley became a daily practice, a ritual of patience, observation, and gentle care. Each morning she rose before dawn, dressed in her simple field gear, and carried her equipment bag carefully, mindful of every movement. The twin suns of HFY-NEXUS began their slow rise, casting soft light across the silver-leafed trees and misty valleys, creating an almost magical scene. Mara moved with calm purpose, knowing that every step toward the valley was a step toward deepening the trust she had been building with Carver. By now, the creature seemed to anticipate her presence. As Mara approached the clearing, she could feel the soft vibrations of its movements in the earth. Carver was there, standing tall and calm, its bright eyes observing her with what Mara had come to recognize as curiosity mixed with intelligence. There was no fear, no tension, only awareness. Mara smiled softly, acknowledging the silent greeting between them. "Good morning, Carver," she said, her voice gentle and warm. "I'm glad to see you again." Carver tilted its head slightly, shifting its weight in a way Mara understood as recognition. She lowered herself to sit on a flat stone at a respectful distance, keeping her hands visible and relaxed. "I have some supplies to check your leg," she continued, though the words were less important than the tone. The creature's calm attention conveyed that it understood her meaning. Mara had learned that communication with Carver relied not on words but on intent, patience, and respect. Over the next hour, Mara carefully applied fresh salve to the healed cut, using gentle movements to avoid startling the creature. Carver remained still, allowing her to work with a grace that amazed her. Each subtle gesture it made, shifting its weight, flicking its tail, or moving slightly closer, spoke volumes. Mara began to notice patterns in its behavior, moments of curiosity, brief attention to her tools, subtle shifts indicating comfort or interest. She recorded these observations in her mind, knowing that they were just as important as the physical care she provided. By mid-morning, Mara decided it was time to take the next step. She slowly reached into her bag and pulled out a small, smooth stone that she had polished herself. "This is safe," she said softly, holding it on her palm, flat and steady. "You can see it, touch it, or ignore it. It is your choice." Carver approached cautiously, tilting its head to inspect the object. Mara held her breath, waiting for any sign of discomfort or fear, but none came. Instead, the creature leaned closer, sniffing the air around her hands. The gentle trust they had built over days was deepening. Encouraged, Mara spoke softly about the valley, describing the glowing plants, the movement of the silver leaves, and the soft hum of distant insects. Her voice was steady, rhythmic, almost musical in its simplicity. Carver listened attentively, occasionally shifting its position to maintain comfort while staying close. Mara realized that they had created a shared space, a place of understanding where both could exist without fear, without dominance, and without rush. As the day progressed, Mara explored a small experiment in trust. She set out a few harmless objects, a stick, a small smooth rock, and a piece of soft cloth, allowing Carver to approach them freely. The creature investigated each item carefully, sniffing, nudging, and occasionally stepping back to observe Mara's reactions. Mara remained calm, speaking softly and slowly, ensuring that the environment remained safe and predictable. Each interaction, however minor it seemed, was a building block in the bond they shared. By afternoon, Mara realized she had gained something extraordinary. The creature that had once been a distant, formidable presence was now allowing her into its personal space with a level of trust that few humans had ever earned. Carver's posture was relaxed, and it followed her movements with attentive eyes rather than defensive instincts. Mara spoke softly. "You are very patient and wise." Feeling a deep respect for the intelligence that radiated from the voice, she had begun to see not just a strong creature, but a being capable of understanding, reflection, and silent communication. During a quiet pause, Mara decided to test their shared understanding further. She extended her hand slowly, palm up, toward Carver's foreleg. It was not a touch intended to interfere, only an offering of proximity and connection. The creature paused, then shifted slightly, lowering itself enough to allow her to brush her hand near the leg without direct pressure. Mara felt a surge of quiet triumph. Trust had been earned, step by careful step. She spoke gently. "Thank you for letting me be close. I am honored." Carver responded in the subtle ways Mara had come to recognize: a tilt of the head, a shift in the tail, a steady gaze that seemed almost like acknowledgement. It did not move aggressively or recoil. It simply allowed the connection to exist, demonstrating that respect had grown between them. Mara realized that this bond was unique, not only for the trust she had earned but for the intelligence and awareness Carver had shown in choosing to accept it. By late afternoon, the twin suns began to dip low, casting a soft golden glow across the valley. Mara decided it was time to leave, but she did so slowly, carefully gathering her tools while keeping her eyes on the creature. Carver remained nearby, watching silently, a calm guardian of the space they had shared. Mara stood and spoke softly. "I will return tomorrow. Thank you for trusting me today." The creature lowered its head slightly in acknowledgement, a gesture that Mara recognized as a sign of respect. Walking back along the path toward the outpost, Mara reflected on the extraordinary experience. She had not only treated an injury but had participated in the development of a unique bond, one built on patience, calmness, and mutual respect. She understood now that Carver's behavior was not merely instinctual, it was thoughtful. It had evaluated her actions, measured her intentions, and responded with its own careful judgment. Mara felt privileged to witness such intelligence firsthand. That evening, Mara recorded her observations in her notebook. She described Carver's gestures, the subtle communication through posture and movement, and the growing trust between them. She noted how the creature had allowed her into its personal space, how it had observed her carefully, and how it had chosen to remain calm and receptive. Mara wrote not just as a scientist but as someone who had shared a profound connection, a rare opportunity to bridge the gap between species through patience, care, and understanding. The following morning, Mara returned to the valley with a quiet excitement. She carried her tools as always, but she also brought a small gift, a bundle of soft leaves and herbs from the valley, carefully arranged as an offering. "This is for you," she said softly, placing the bundle near the clearing where Carver waited. The creature approached, sniffed the leaves, and paused, then lowered its head slightly, toward the gift. Mara understood immediately. This was recognition, a reciprocal gesture of acknowledgement. The strongest predator in the valley had shown respect for her intentions, just as she had shown care for its well-being. They spent the day together in quiet observation, sharing space and presence rather than words. Mara spoke softly about the plants, the mist, and the patterns of life around them. Carver moved with calm awareness, occasionally approaching the offering she had placed, occasionally observing her carefully. Mara realized that their interactions had become more than just trust. They had become companionship. There was a silent understanding, a shared rhythm between human and vocal, a recognition of respect and awareness that transcended language. That the sun began to set. Mara knew it was time to leave. She stood slowly, careful not to startle the creature, and spoke softly. "I will return tomorrow. Thank you for sharing this day with me." Carver remained in the clearing for a moment, then slowly moved closer to the edge of the path where she would leave. Its head dipped slightly, a deliberate gesture Mara recognized as a sign of respect and acknowledgement. She smiled, feeling the full depth of the connection they had formed. Walking back to the outpost, Mara reflected on the journey. What had begun as a cautious encounter had transformed into a relationship built on patience, understanding, and mutual respect. Carver had shown that even the strongest predator could recognize sincerity, kindness, and calmness. Mara had learned that respect was not demanded, it was earned, step by careful step, through patience and awareness. That night, she wrote in her notebook, describing the day's events, the gestures, and the quiet acknowledgments that had passed between them. She noted that trust, once established, had opened the door to a bond that transcended fear, dominance, or instinct. Mara understood that she had been part of something extraordinary, the recognition by the galaxy's strongest predator that a human could be trusted, respected, and acknowledged as a worthy presence. As Mara drifted to sleep that night, she thought of the valley, of the glowing plants, the silver leaves, and the intelligent, calm eyes of Carver. She felt a quiet gratitude for the lessons she had learned, lessons about patience, trust, respect, and the extraordinary possibilities of connection across worlds. The strongest predator had shown her that strength is not always about power alone. Sometimes it is about understanding, awareness, and the ability to recognize sincerity. And in that quiet understanding,